Yariv, lovely to meet you. How are you doing today?
Same here, doing great. Lovely to meet you. It's a fun event.
Good. I'm glad. We always like to have a fun event, and we're going to have a bit of a chit chat today. And I was thinking about how to start this conversation with you, and I might offend you in the first question.
Go for it.
So bear with me here. It's fair to say, I think, you worked on innovative, the real sexy stuff, let's be honest. I've got here, your bleeding edge of conversational AI, assistant, lens, just to name a few. Why would you then move to the cloud and contact centers? Because that to me seems like the opposite way around that most people come and chat to me about. Yeah. Explain that.
Yeah, sure, yeah. Yeah, so not only did I work on this, but I actually started Assistant together with two other people back in 2015. And then we started Lens, smart displays. And in my last role, I managed Duplex, the kind of the cutting edge of conversational
AI. Yeah, the real sexy stuff.
Exactly, the sexy stuff. And it was amazing. And I think it was an amazing creative period, definitely both on technology and product. And I feel that we actually invented a lot of the stack and the components that will be part of the OS of the future. However, while the consumer world is very interesting and innovative, I did feel a little bit that sometimes we build amazing solutions that the users are not yet ready to use. Whether it is because the phone is kind of not great at anything, but okay at everything, and changing that habit into using voice is very hard. Part of it, I think, like the market is still looking for what is the product market fit for these capabilities. For sure, we have seen on smart displays that people use it for smart home automation. It's much easier to speak or to say for entertainment and consuming media. In the car, everyone uses voice. For navigation, for media control, for communication, and also as you run on your phone. But it's not yet mainstream. And I wanted actually to go back to my roots where really focusing on a real user problem, solving it, where there is perfect market fit and you can actually solve it. And I was actually lucky enough, because I love the technology and the product of conversational AI. It's the future, there is no doubt about that. And surprisingly enough, I found that actually the biggest adapters and the biggest product market fit for this technology is contact centers.
Okay.
Of all the talks about AI is going to change the world, rule the world, win the world, contact center at the moment is actually the forefront of that. And for a very clear reason. I think, one, there is clear value. We are already saving, so all of us know how it is to call a contact center. You're at most need, you lost your luggage, you're late for a flight, your bill is wrong, and then you're put on hold for 40 minutes and you get someone, an agent that joined yesterday is not very good at what they're doing. It's very frustrating. And the reason is that there is amazing demand, increasing demand from users. There are, budget cost on the other side, huge churn for agents because it's very stressful. And AI is actually, this is a sweet spot for AI to fill in to scale the operations. So actually already today, contact centers, by automating to bots and by augmenting agents or by analyzing what's happening, they are already saving huge amounts of money and improving the operations while balancing the cost and the customer care. So there is a real problem to solve here, going back to my roots. The other thing is, when we build these digital assistants and Lens and whatnot, at least the UI and the way you did it, and maybe it's our fault, it's a little bit of this ambient thing that you're supposed to say everything to it, but it can do some stuff great, most of the stuff mediocrely at the moment, to be honest. Over here, the use case is super well defined. We know exactly, we want to replace an agent for a bill or for a payment or for an internet connection or for where is your location, right? So actually, it's much easier to build a solution that is really, really good for that problem, to iterate on it and improve it. So we are actually now taking these amazing, product and technological innovations and working on a really large scale complex problems. Because, augmenting or replacing human agents is a very hard problem. But we are actually doing it in a place where there is strong product market fit, clear value, and the use case that this technology is actually mature to solve. So yeah, so this is why actually I find it, at least at this point, more exciting. And of course, there is a business to build and partnerships and an ecosystem, which is also, of course, very exciting. Yeah. So good question, but I'm proud and happy to have made that change.
Good. Well, you've not stormed out, so we can continue the interview. I've not offended you too much.
No, near little.
Fantastic. I think it's really interesting, as you say, that the possibilities with this sort of technology are endless, right? It's so fantastically greenfield, which makes it really exciting. No wonder so many people are coming into this industry. It's great. As you say, the pain point, however, is that because the art of the possible is so vast, it means that there's many organizations who are perhaps applying it a bit scale, a bit macro, and actually, as you say, it's those really specific use cases that are going to deliver way more value because you really know what you want out of it, right? What are the sorts of trends you're seeing in the market with other ways that AI is currently being used in this way, and conversational AI is currently being used? What are some of the trends that you're seeing?
So even specifically when I look at contact center, I think the hype, and I think the hype in the industry in general was chatbots and voice bots, I think since 2017. I think that's where it peaked. And there have been work, and definitely, like I said, it delivers value. However, similar TV and radio, internet and newspapers, YouTube and TV, all of these, they discovered that it doesn't replace yet the agents. And we're seeing a lot of opportunities to augment agents. So one of the challenges, for example, in contact centers, is that over a year, you have 100% churn. So all over here, not a single agent from last year is currently in the contact center. So it means you have new people learning again, all the amplifying all the problems. So one of the things is, how can we coach the agents? How can we augment them? How can we make these human-to-human conversations faster, better, more accurate? So there is a huge trend in the industry on what's called agent assist, and which means that both during the call, we can actually listen to the call together with the agents and show recommendations from articles based on the history, based on what we know from the best agents and whatnot. But also in addition to that, we can automatically transcribe. We can actually create a summarization at the end of the call, saving additional very, very important meetings. Then we have also seen the rise of insights. So there is a lot of unstructured conversations that are happening with a lot of important information. What are the top issues that your customers are having? What are they happy about? What are they unhappy? Are your agents good? Which one is good? What is the sentiment? What are the topics that are coming? Are there trending topics? Or, how was the recent launch and whatnot? So these are super important insights, both for the operation of the contact center, but also for the business leads, which products are successful, how was my launch? A lot of that at the moment is this very unstructured conversation. So we also have product that is called Insights that listens to everything, human to human, human to bot, and everything, and analyzes and create topic modeling, sentiment analysis, and so forth. So we're definitely seeing that this goes mainstream. And I think the maturity is when you understand that it's not black or white, it's not human only or bot only. And really good automation where I've seen is actually when these go hand in hand and we let humans do what they are really good at and we let machines do what they're really good at and hand off. And we're seeing this conversation when it's handed off back and forth and the end user gets a faster and better experience.
Yeah, I think there's a few things in that I want to kind of tease out a little bit further as well. I think what's really interesting is you center it in the reality of the situation. I think, as you say, in terms of that maturity of this conversation, there was and is a fear that robots are going to take over. Everyone's going to lose their job to a robot. As you say, we now know this is probably not going to be true for most organizations and most applications at present. So we can put that to one side there. And I love the reality, as you set the scene there, that most people, when they're ringing up a call center, aren't ringing up to say, hey guys, you're doing an awesome job. I love being your customer. Chances are they're coming with some sort of problem and they need a solution. And I think what's really interesting is, as you say, by applying then that next layer of insights, you can beat them to the punch. And if that's a case of putting out messages on social media, putting things out on websites that says, we know this is a big challenge at the moment, and you can kind of front run that, and that experience, they're not having to pick up the phone and have this conversation because you've already got on top of it as
Moreover,
well.
and again, coming from a slightly Google-centric perspective, I would argue that 99.99999% of the call centers, before they happen, they start on a Google search or a YouTube search.
Yeah.
And we can actually capture already at that point and actually trigger the bot or the answer before the user called the call center. And this is much better for users and for call centers. So this is for example, to your point, proactivity. Once you do the reactive thing very well and you have an insight on what are trending topics, what's happening with that answer, actually you can start being more proactive and catch users earlier on, which is better experience for the user. And of course, cheaper and more effective also for the contact center. So that's another thing that is happening, yeah.
Now, this all sounds fine and dandy. I love what we're talking about, but there must be some big challenges and barriers to what we're talking about. And I wonder if you could shed some light on that.
So for sure, the first big challenge, of course, is just to make sure that speech and NLU work super well, and the bar is always going high. Right? So we want to forever be able to solve more complex conversations, but we also want to make it such that the cost and time to define these bots and to maintain them actually makes sense, which is a huge challenge for the industry. I think there are a lot of companies out there that are offering to build bots, but once you're trying to build an enterprise-ready bot, you find out that this is MML, manual machine learning, basically people defining these very giant graphs that confuse business logic with the language complexity. So this is one of the things, for example, that we're looking at with large language model that can handle the language, so that you only need to deal with the business logic, and a slew of solutions ever improving models, both for the STT, TTS, and for the natural language understanding. We're also seeing more and more companies that are trying to create a digital assistant, as part of other channels, right? Both chat and voice. And for digital assistant, the bar goes higher because the way people communicate with digital assistant is very different than how you would communicate with a bot over the phone or even in your chat. Just a different way. We've seen it ourselves, We have held billions and billions and billions of queries every day on search before we launched Assistant. On the first day of Assistant, we suddenly saw queries that we have never seen before. Do you love me? Are you my friend? Are you mine? Will you stay with me? What should I do about us? How do you feel? Right? Kind of. And then unfortunately, over time, users are trained to dumb down their queries when they're disappointed. But you don't want to create that. So there is definitely challenges as the core technology, and we're currently investing tremendously, working very closely with DeepMind and brain research to improve that. But it's not just that, especially as you shift to these modalities of assistance. Discovery is a huge question. You look at it. What can it do and how should I ask it to do it? It's a huge question, right? The power of assistance is that we go away from rigid UIs that limit you to a very specific certain types of features that they can do, but they also guide you. And suddenly you're in front of this, how do I know what I need to ask? How do I know how to ask it? And that's very frustrating and even scary for certain users. Then, there is the expectation that the assistant understands the context and a bit more proactive. This is an expectation that comes with, intelligence and human interaction. Once it speaks like a human, understands like a human, you expect these additional capabilities, right? So actually, how do you create this productivity? How do you model the world? How do you model context? How do you model the user? These are very large problems. The whole area of automation, right? So understanding is only the little piece, right? You understand the intent. How do you actually now make it happen behind the scenes where most of the systems are still all systems with APIs or without even no APIs? So there is a lot of pieces that, again, multimodality. I think that a lot of, in the beginning, people got excited. Okay, let's book a hotel room or a flight via conversational agent. And then you do back and forth. It's like a long tennis game, right? Like 3 hours of back and forth. No one wants that. When we communicate, we naturally understand that there are certain things that are better when I tell you, and there are better things that it's better when I show you. For example, in the restaurant, no one reads to you the menu. you look at the menu and it choose by words.
Yeah.
Because, the best way to consume information is visual. The best way to select out of a very video is actually spoken. So how do you do this multimodality? And these days, it's not just over the phone. People consume it in the car, in the phone, on screens, on wearables. So how do you deal with that? So these are all kinds of questions that we have almost a decade working on assistants, but it's new to the enterprise. And this is where we're actually bringing our know-how and expertise on even how to think about the problem as you're migrating your interfaces and UIs to be more natural conversational UIs. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think really from there, my big takeaway from that is context is king. And it's such a large challenge in every aspect of it. As you say, it's a giant puzzle piece. And I think context is really one of the big barriers and challenges for this. Now, you've clearly got such a vast amount of experience. And this next question might be hard, but I still want to ask it of what are some of your key learnings going through this journey? What have been things that you've really digested and thought, yeah, that's a real key learning for me?
I think it's a paradigm shift. I think you need to understand that, in terms of how, I think the tagline is, I remember I used like in the late 90s, I was an instructor teaching people how to use Windows and Microsoft Word, right? So basically we learned how to use computers. Now computers are learning how to communicate with us, right? We kind of switched that. And that creates a whole different set of expectations. So you need, like I said, you need to rethink all the basics of, how does the stack look like, right? Like the new stack is some sensory capabilities at the bottom, then understanding, interpreting that. Then there is a kind of world model and context, and there is a proactivity, automation. Yeah. But as you think of all of this with all these problems, you need to connect it to a world that still operates in the old way. Because, you cannot, we tried, and Amazon also tried not to create all of these actions and whatnot, but you cannot create the richness of mobile apps and enterprise apps in this new paradigm, right? So you need to find a way to shift the user interaction to this completely different way of doing things, different devices, different ways, but not leave behind all the capabilities that are existing. And I think like realizing that and rebuilding and understanding complexity on that, but also realizing the other end and planning to that connectivity, I think is like key for the success of this paradigm shift. And
Yeah, fantastic. You've been on the cutting edge. You've come back towards more business value, real strong use cases. For you, what do you think the future of this space is? What can you see coming that really excites you?
So I think like in the very near future, I think large language models are very exciting, and they're coming actually, into this, like I said, at the moment, in order to, even in the consumer world, there's a lot of manual work to define some of these conversations. And a lot of it is not so much in the fulfillment or in the business logic, because even if you think of a complex business logic, usually these are like manageable diagrams. The problem explodes when you are trying to imagine all the ways that a human can say, like, even fill a form, whether you say your last name first or first name, how do you say your address? And then maybe if you say two things, at once, or maybe you're asking a question and a follow-up, you change because you got confused before, right? At the moment, all of these complexities are encapsulated in whatever mechanism you're trying to control the state of the diagram. As we're moving to large language models, actually they can handle a lot of this complexity and basically kind of traverse a graph or whatnot. So I think that's like one a huge breakthrough that is happening in the short term. I think the shift to new modalities is also coming, and we're slowly figuring it out. There was, I remember I grew up in the offline world, and then I remember, the huge difference when suddenly you connect a computer to the wall, and then, the shop is at your home or office, the post is at your home or office, then everything is suddenly is where you sit. I completely changed the physical versus the digital world, and the bank, you don't go to these places anymore, you don't buy a ticket in a travel agency and all of these things. And then, very, not a huge change, we shrunk the computer a little bit so it could fit in a pocket and cut some of the wires and added very basic mic, camera, GPS, very simple mechanism. Suddenly, the smartphone came, and that became the most addictive 24/7. All the apps that we're currently using 24/7 did not exist 15 years ago. Like, I don't know what's more, did not exist. Selfie did not exist. Tagging a place, like all of these things that we do all day, every day did not exist, with a very simple change that actually made the device, easier to interact and with you all the time. So as I imagine now that we have like all of these wearables and things that are around us and that we're immersed in, and we don't need to take them out, turn them off, unlock, press button. We communicate with them in the way that is most natural to us. And we can express our intents in the most robust, in the most natural way. That's like, in my opinion, 10x more than the phone, and how technology will prevail, how actually, power users and novice users will be able to use the same advanced features. And again, I think that new classes of users, just like, you created the phone and 15 years ago, we're all doing things we did not imagine before. I think completely, as we add all of these new sensors and gadgets, and it's all around us, and it's like, for well-being, for health, for sports, for driving, I think it will be a very different world. And again, all of this is powered by the fact that we're giving senses to machines to understand us and to understand the world. So that's super,
It's really interesting, actually, to ground us in the journey that this has been on. And an example the other day, it was in our company, we were kind of chatting about these experiences, is if you ask, let's say, a 6-year-old, pretend to be on the phone, you see them do this. If you ask someone of my generation, pretend to be on the phone, you're doing this.
Yes.
And I think that just one example encapsulates how far technology has come in our relationship with it. And as you say, kind of the future and what goes forward.
I assume they would do this, but
well, this is it, right?
Yeah.
And another example, which was so endearing, I was in a charity shop and saw a young person, there must have been 3 or 4, kind of waddle up to an old static TV and try and pinch the screen. And it's, as you say, it's how you grew up with the technology you have, and kind of the expectations of those cohorts going forward as well. And I think that, going down a bit of a tangent now, I know, but I think that's really interesting in terms of expectations of technology as well, of what you expect to get from this type of thing.
I've seen cats swiping, actually. The videos of cats swiping,
We spoke about
it's a new demographic, by the way.
Yeah, well, there you go. Exactly. Gosh, we could go down a right rabbit hole of all of these conversations for sure. We spoke about what excites you. Turn the table ever so slightly to, obviously, your deep knowledge of things. What are you a little bit cautious about in this space, as you can see coming in the future? What would be your kind of cautionary tale to the audience listening today?
So I think, going back at the assistants and chatbot, I think we underestimated the complexity and overestimated what they can do in the short term. I think we need to be careful. I think we've learned responsible AI. So for example, I was touching on large language models, and I specifically did not touch the generative aspect. I think they can do a lot of magical stuff. I don't think the world is yet ready to hand off critical, important things for generative large language models. And I think there is a lot of nice workarounds. Like I said, you can traverse a predefined graph or whatnot. But the whole area of responsible AI, the whole area of adversarial attacks and how to protect against them. And I think also it's a fast-moving and maturing technology where best practices are still learned. A lot of companies are either trying to do it themselves or try to save the money when they're doing it. And I think actually it ends up to be the longer and the more costly path. I think you need to understand that the way we did stuff 5 years ago, 3 years ago, 1 year ago, is very different than how it is now. And I think really working with experts is critical. Also, not everything is necessarily an AI problem. And not all companies have the data for AI. So I think before you start and spend money and go for an AI solution, because, go to an AI provider, of course they will come with an AI solution. Ask yourself, what is my problem? How am I currently solving it? How am I currently measuring the value and cost that I'm getting? and then have that as a baseline to compare what you can actually get by AI. Because AI, is good for some stuff and is not, unnecessary or not so good for other things.
Yeah.
So I think understanding that is always being knowledgeable about what you're doing is always critical.
Well, Yariv, it's been an absolute pleasure chatting to you today.
Same
Thank
here.
you for coming in and having this conversation
Sure,
with me.
thank you.